All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session 2 of the Modern Marketer in the Modern Workplace series. I believe we have lots of different participants here from different parts of the country. So grab your coffee, grab your lunch, and join us. And very excited to introduce the series and our panelists today. Just for everybody to know here, the AMA, you might be familiar with the AMA, is an organization that has been around for a long time, and our goal is enabling brilliance in marketing. And this is with that in mind, we put this series together to help marketers with their career journeys in this very, very kind of impossible time in the marketing industry with media fragmentation, technology, AI, the economic pressures and budget pressures. So we have a series of 4 sessions. This is session 2. Our first one happened in May. And this one, as you know, is focused on personal branding for the modern marketer. And want to introduce our speakers here. Anouk Pappers, who is the CEO of Signitt, an online reputation management firm that helps people like all of us build a presence in the online space and help you accomplish your professional goals. So whether you're looking to get a board seat, a profit, nonprofit, if you're looking for career advancement or even a career pivot, Anouk's going to talk about how do you use your presence to actually enable that. She is what we call a brand anthropologist, a master storyteller who helps others tell their story and has written several books, I believe 15 books, and also a keynote speaker at many celebrated events. And it's my pleasure to also introduce Kristy LoRusso. Kristy is the national CMO of Kaiser Permanente, and where she oversees all aspects of marketing, from brand strategy, brand advertising, performance marketing, technology, operations, research, all the areas that touch a CMO today. I think she's a perfect example of what the marketing industry is really sort of grappling with, brand and performance and technology, and bringing it all together. And she is also very well recognized in the industry with lots of awards and accolades, and she will be sharing her journey with us. And prior to Kaiser Permanente, she was at several other well-known brands like Walt Disney, Yahoo, and Time Warner, I believe. So with that, I would love to just get us all right into it. Just one thing, Anouk will take us through very actionable 6-step guide on how to get this off the ground. And she has also been kind enough to offer a one-on-one free consultation with any of you if you're interested on how to get started. So please do get in touch with her so you can take this further right away. Thank you so much. And off to you, Anouk.
Okay. Thank you, Rasika, for the introduction. Kristy and I will be talking today about how you can build your personal brand in order to maximize your online presence. Because as we know, we live in a virtual or semi-virtual world, and having an online presence is really essential in order for us to achieve our next goal. So this is what we do. We support mostly women and diverse leaders to achieve their next professional goal. And we do this by doing 3 things. We help them define or redefine their personal brand. What is it that I stand for? Who am I? And what do I bring to the table? What's my personal value proposition? Secondly, because you can have your personal brand, but if it's in your drawer, it doesn't really work. So we need to articulate your brand into relevant content. We need to make sure that we create the proof points that you are actually who you say you are. And thirdly, we use Google as your wingwoman or your wingman, meaning we publish the content out there. And when people look for us, hiring managers, potential boards, search firms, whoever it is, when people Google us, we need to make sure that the right content pops up. The whole reason why this is important is because we moved years ago into a reputation economy where we as professionals are being judged and evaluated as if we were brands. People look at us, they do not just look at our company, they also look at us. Who are we? What are we doing? What are we achieving? What actually do we stand for? What are our values? And a big part of that, of course, has become our online presence. And whether we like it or not, and whether it's accurate or not, you are who Google says you are. This is still my favorite one-liner, and it's just, before COVID, people could say, yeah, well, I don't really kind of agree. But nowadays, you know, there's no more denying this. So What I would like to do before we go into figuring out how to do all this, I would like to see if we can get on the same page by asking you 3 questions. And Ruth is going to help me set up the poll. So we have 3 questions. And the first one is, do you Google yourself on a regular basis? Answer is simple. It's a yes or no question. And please support us by answering this question, because it will give us a nice, some nice data that we can use. So I answered as well. So we'll give it a minute so that Ruth can make sure that we get all the answers that we're looking for. So do you Google yourself on a regular basis? Let's say every 3 months, you type in your name on Google and you see what shows up. Ruth, waiting for you to share the results, if you can. Yes. Okay. So 34% Googles themselves and 66 doesn't. Okay. Remember, let's say 1/3 and 2/3. Nice split. Okay. Second question. Who Googles others? Before you meet someone, after you met someone, before you decide to hire someone, before you decide to work with someone, before you decide to go on a date with someone, whatever it is, who Googles others? And again, simple question, yes, no, and your answers are being appreciated. So it's like, you know, before you decide to hire someone, if someone wants to join a project you're working on, who Googles others? 85% and 15% says no. Okay, so going back to the first question, not on screen, but just in math, 1/3 of us Googles ourselves. 2/3 of us don't. But 85%, which is almost everybody, Googles us. So this means that you all know what I look like online, but I don't. Which is kind of scary and it's strange, because if you think about this in a different way, it's like going into a in-person meeting where you do not bring your business cards, you do not prepare whatever, anything to say. And lastly, you didn't look in the mirror before you went into that business meeting. Nobody does that. We make sure that we look good, that we're dressed in a certain way, that we are prepared, we bring our business cards. Why do we still not do that online? It's not just because it's a fun thing to do, it's a necessary thing to do. Because my third question is, whoever decided not to follow through with the relationship based on what you found or didn't find online? Which, again, it's a simple yes, yes or no. So let's say there are 2 candidates for the same role. There is Kristy and there's Rasika. Kristy has a great online presence, of course. And let's say Rasika, nothing personal, but Rasika maybe doesn't so much. I'm the hiring manager, I'm the search professional. So I'm looking at these 2 people. Who am I going to talk to first? To Kristy, of course. And unless she doesn't live up to the expectations she created online, I'm not even going to bother and connect with Rasika. So the problem is that we are missing out on opportunities that we're not even aware of. Ruth, do we have the results? Okay, 2/3. So here's the other way around. So 2/3 of you decided at some point not to follow through with the relationship. Again, this is the whole reason why it's important to at least be aware of your own online presence, and ideally, of course, to do something with it. We had another session 2 weeks ago for the NACD, National Association of Corporate Directors, and there was around 80% of people who said, it was a big group, it was like 160 people, and there was like 80% of people who said not to have followed through with the relationship. So again, to make sure that you have the opportunity for that next project, for that next role, for whatever your next goal is, your online presence has become an essential part of it. Okay, so let's say that we agree and we're on the same page that this is important. Now, before we go into the steps on how to do this, I would briefly like to share some mistakes that even senior executives make when it comes to their online presence. The first, and I think the most important one, is that we do not focus on the future. If you think about your LinkedIn, if you think about your bio, your resume, And many conversations that we have, it's about the past. This is where I lived. This is where I studied. This is where I worked. This is what I did, which is great, but it's a monologue. It doesn't help you get to the next level. So we should shift gears and talk about the future. This is where I want to go. This is the value that I add. This is what I believe in. This is what I think I can, this is how I think our industry will evolve. It's really shifting gears toward the future. Very, very important. And go to your LinkedIn or go think about the conversation that you have and say, oh, yes, indeed, it's very much about the past. That doesn't help. The moment we start talking about the future, we can start helping each other. You can say, hey, wait a minute, if this is what you're looking for, I know someone who knows someone, etc. So really focus on the future, super important. The second one, and that's another trap, let's say, that we fall into, you're not your job title. When you present yourself, if we would have done let's say, meet and greet for this group, we all would have said, I'm marketing and marketing. It would have been, let's say, more or less of the same. So how do you differentiate yourself? It's not by talking about your job title. It's by talking about who you are and what you stand for. It's my personal story. Remember, people connect with people and not with job titles or products or services. It's us. I connect with Kristy because I'm going to spoil it, but she's an agent of positive change. That's why we connect. That makes her different than we say she's a CMO. It's great that she's a CMO, but she's not the only one. So we need to figure out the things that we can present ourselves with that are different than our job titles. Another critical mistake is we do not create content for many reasons. We'll go into that a bit later. But to not create content means that you might have your brand, but if you do not articulate it into anything substantial, it's just a word or it's just a phrase. So not creating content is another critical mistake because we don't have the proof points. And the last one I want to share now, another nice one-liner: if you don't publish, it didn't happen. So let's say we are doing this panel today, we're doing this session today, it's being recorded. So ideally, we should all publish a snippet or something small to have the effect or to generate, let's say, additional exposure, whatever it is, to show that we are speaking, that we know what we're talking about. So to position yourself as a thought leader, even if you go to a, say, the next in-person AMA conference, make sure that you're there, that you take some pictures. Even if you don't have video, at least show yourself there in action. So don't take those posing pictures, but let's say some in action photographs, which show that you are growing, you're learning, you're doing these kinds of things, which position you in a different way than when you're not publishing anything, or when, let's say, you're just doing your job behind your computer. So make sure that you start thinking about whatever occasions you have to show your learning, your expertise, your thought leadership, and start sharing them. So enough of the mistakes. Now, how do we go about building our brand and building our online presence? Because again, we can have our brand, but if we don't articulate it, if we don't share it with the outside world, it's just something that's in our drawer. These are the 6 steps, the roadmap with 6 milestones that we created to go from where we are now to having a successful brand and online presence. And it all starts with the online assessment. So as we saw, 2/3 of you, 1/3 of you does Google themselves on a regular basis, 2/3 doesn't. My first assignment actually is that as of tomorrow, or maybe in the weekend, you start Googling yourself, and do that every 3 months. Just go online, type in your name and see what shows up. Even if you decide not to do anything with it, at least you're aware of what you look like. So when you do this online assessment, it's very important to look at it. So you Google yourself, okay, and then you answer these 4 questions. Is this me? Let's say there are 10 results on the first page. How many of these are me? How many of these results are relevant? And relevant meaning, okay, do they add something to your next goal? is it current or is it 2016, 17 or 18? So it's kind of like old. And overall, you have to look at if it will help you achieve your next goal. So Kristy, question for you. When you look to hire new people in your teams, or when you're working with outside suppliers or agencies or whatever it is, simple question, but do you Google them? Do you do an internet search? Do you check these people out before you hire them?
Yes, now more than ever, particularly since you and I started working together over the last few years, and you helped me understand, just as you laid out, because I answered the questions just like the team answered the questions. I hadn't looked at myself. I did look at others, and I made decisions mostly sometimes on what I saw online, but now it's actually a factor in hiring processes, vendor engagements, and just business decisions. It's been extremely helpful.
Yeah. And if we talk about your online presence, why is it important for you? What are you trying to achieve, let's say, and how are you using your online presence to get there?
Yeah. So early on, it was really to get my LinkedIn in order. It wasn't effective. My resume wasn't up to date. I didn't have a good story. I wasn't easy to understand what I brought to the conversation. And then as I went through the steps that as you and I worked together, I was able to, work on my brand. And I think we're going to go through the process of that in a couple of slides. But, I think what's really interesting is one of the things you asked me is, what do you stand for? And I talked about being a change agent. And you said, well, that's fine, but everyone says that. Talk to me about what's going to differentiate you in that space. So we came up with agent of positive change. And then kind of built from there. So I've been working really hard with your support, the team support, and working on my own to really build that out, so that all the dimensions of my digital footprint reinforce being an agent of positive change. And I'll say just sort of three more things, and then I'll hand it back over to you. There's kind of three dimensions to that. One is in my role being an agent of positive change, the fact that I support sustainable growth, which I, focus on the core and will look at new things, but not for the bad of the business, if you will. Growing teams and sustaining teams in the context of positive change. And then as a leader, really being willing to put myself out there to share my experiences to help others learn and grow through my achievements and, more importantly, my mistakes.
Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing. This is very, very helpful. And it's just, everybody has their own story, but it's kind of like, if we don't do this, because the thing that you started saying, it's like, yes, of course, I look at other people before I hire them. And yes, we have resumes, but a resume is just a resume. We also want to know what else is out there. So when we do our online assessment, we should look at what we call our all results, which is still the text-based, but we should also really take a close look at our images and our video. People want to see how we come across. So video content has become extremely important in the past few years. And you can use video content from panels or speaking engagements, but you can also, if you don't have speaking engagements, you can create some video content yourself. Think about a 30 to 45 second short snippet presenting yourself or giving your opinion on a certain topic or issue that's going on. That's something that can really help, and it's easy to publish it on YouTube, and it will show up on your first page of Google if you tag it in the right way, of course. Images are super important as well. And of course, everybody has their LinkedIn image. So that's usually the first, and in many cases, the only image that shows up. Start thinking about creating more images and putting more images up that make it easier for people to understand who you are. Because if it's just one picture and then all kinds of other people with the same or similar names, it's like, well, I still don't know who you are. So here in the case of Tony, the pictures that we're seeing in the middle, she has a good mix. And then if we look here, perfect. This is a profile picture, no comments, perfect. However, this picture is much more interesting. Same person, she's sitting on stage, people are listening to her, she's speaking, it's Salesforce, Deloitte, oh, she must be someone in the know. So even though her profile picture, which is up there and should be, it's perfect, this picture tells a story. So think about whenever you are on stage, or again, whenever you are at a conference, start thinking about how you can position yourself with images as well. So online assessment done. So the next step on our roadmap is personal branding. Now, there are as many ways to build your personal brand, I think, as people who actually help you do that. So there is many different methodologies that you can follow. Ours is based on the work we've been doing for years with women and diverse leaders. We focus on the 6 dimensions that make up the brand you. Our methodology is very pragmatic because what we want to create a brand in a short amount of time that will help you apply the different elements of your brand fast. So we talk about your next goal because you need to understand where you want to go, because that will help you define your target audience. It will help you define your communication subjects, your tone of voice. So all these things are integrated. We talk about your unique benefit points. So it's really digging in and understanding what makes you different than other people like you. This is hard, but that's why it's a process. You need to start thinking about these things. What is the problem that you solve? What benefit is it that you would bring if we would hire you on our team? So these are all things you need to think about. And then once you have those, you need to start coming up with your key differentiators. What are 2 things that people really need to know about you before they meet you? Your positioning statement, I always do this, it's on the highest level. It's your overarching, your umbrella statement. Who are you? And what do you stand for? Independent of your role or your job. And that's what we worked on with Kristy as well. It's not about your job. Again, your whole personal brand has nothing to do with your job title, because your job title changes. But what you stand for, what your brand stands for, doesn't change, at least not that much. There's, of course, differences, etc., over time, but in principle, you are who you are, and that's what you bring with you over time. So to share some, yes.
Can I just jump in for a second? Because that last point, I had to get my head wrapped around that. Because I was like, I have spent my whole career with my eye on becoming a CMO. And then we met and you said, that's great. You got the title. Good for you. You have this incredible role, this great scope. But who are you? I mean, before we started filling in that grid together, I had to take a pause and really kind of process the fact that I had to separate title and work from who I showed up as a person. So I just wanted to point that out because I imagine others on the phone might be kind of processing that too.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great point. And the thing is that we've grown up, let's say, in our careers by identifying ourselves with our job title. And having a CMO role, let's say, as a next goal is not a bad thing at all. It's a good thing. But again, the moment you get there, it's like, okay, now it's my job, but who am I? We also work a lot with people who have a corporate career and retire at some point and are looking for board seats. That moment where you transition from the corporate world where you have your job title to suddenly becoming you because you don't have a job title anymore, that's a very interesting moment in time. And what we are trying to do is make sure that we're ahead of that. So if you start thinking about your brand now, let's say way before you want to go on boards, the moment that you make that change at some point in your career, it's going to be much easier because you're already known with the idea of, hey, wait a minute, it's not about my job, it's about me. So, but thank you for pointing that out. So maybe you can add a little bit more, Kristy, about how we went. I mean, there are six examples here of personal brands that we help develop. But yours is really about being that agent of positive change. Already explained a little bit how that works. Is there something else, let's say, that you would like to elaborate here on when it comes to your brand? So like, how are you using it?
Yeah, I can talk about a little bit how I'm using it. Now that we have done or gotten the basics in on LinkedIn, and we've gotten into a regular cadence of publishing together. So it's my content's me. But then looking at how do I extend that to the company I work for, outside content and me commenting on it. So really trying to figure out how do I dimensionalize what being an agent of positive change might look like. So the getting the basics right, which what you walking through these slides is really great. There's a lot of work that goes into that, but once you do that and it's behind you and you get into the rhythm of publishing and the rhythm of looking outside in and the rhythm of having a voice, it actually becomes part of your sort of the work I do every week. And I make time for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's important. And even if you have, let's say, 15 minutes a week to spend on your LinkedIn, there are certain specific things that you can do to engage with people and to connect with people. Because of course, it's not like, okay, I publish an article and I'm going to sit back and relax and now I'm going to get my next job or my next speaking engagement or whatever it is. It's an ongoing engagement, but it is something that really can work in your advantage. So maybe look at, but we'll come back with Alex as well, Alexandra, when we talk about content as well. So coming up with, let's say, a short descriptor of who you are, a future-focused creative collaborator, a champion strategist and steward for humanity. The interesting thing is when you see these positioning statements of these people, you have no idea where they work. You have no idea about their job title, their industry, which is on purpose because this is your brand. It's not about where you work. It's not about your job title, your industry. Of course, when you start creating content, that will all become clear because it will be part of your proof points. But at that highest level, it has nothing to do with your job title nor your industry. So once we created or built your brand, we think about, okay, where do we integrate, let's say, our personal brand? And one of the ways to do that is on your LinkedIn. So we use Kristy's here as an example, and just some points that I would like to take you through, which are relatively easy, let's say, to look at and to change. First, very important one is make sure that you have a good profile picture. Make sure it's not pixelated. Make sure it's not your dog or your kids. Make sure it's not nothing. Make sure you're there, it's clear, and people can easily see who you are. And if you click on it, it becomes a little bit bigger. Make sure that it is some kind of quality, like, I don't know, 500 KB or 1 megabyte or something like that. But make sure it's of good quality, because a good quality image is a good quality image of you. A bad picture results in a bad image, let's say, that you bring about. Also, the more, let's say, you take care of your LinkedIn, people see that you care. So having a background image that adds something to your brand is super important. In Kristy's case, it's her hometown, it's where she lives, which makes sense. It's a big city, it's not some kind of a rural place. This is interesting. Also, what could be really good in her case, which I think we might change to once we have some footage of her on in-person sessions, is where we can see her speak. Because that's one of the things, if someone sees you speak, if you're on stage, you're standing in front of a group of people, you are instantaneously you're a thought leader. Of course, you need to make it true, but that image tells a lot of things. So think about it, adding a background picture. It can be you, an action picture. We even have someone who said, "Hey, I'm really passionate about the work that I do for my volunteer organization." So we put a picture up of him in the volunteer situation that he was in. So it depends, but think about this and don't leave the space empty. This is such an important part of supporting your personal brand. LinkedIn is giving us that enormous space that we can use, so don't leave it unused. Then look at your headline and make sure that your headline is more than just your job title. Never use your company name in here. As you can see on the right, we have Kaiser Permanente. We don't also need that in the headline. Your LinkedIn is about you. It's not about promoting your company. So it's good that it's on the right side, but don't use it in your headline. Depending on your goal, use the headline as a more transactional way, which means, like, for example, let's say you're looking for a job. Make sure that in your headline, you use the right keywords that search firms will find. So depending on if you say, hey, I'm a CMO, I'm a board director, I'm a brand builder, digital transformation, make sure that you use the right keywords so that hiring managers or search firms can actually find you. If you're saying, hey, I'm not looking for a new job, this is really to promote my personal brand, then add your positioning statement, add your key differentiators to really make sure that people see what it is that you bring to the table. So there are two LinkedIn strategies, let's say, that you can choose from, or of course, make a combination of the two. Then there is the featured section on LinkedIn, which is not new anymore, but still there's only very few people who use this. This is such a great way of positioning yourself visually with your own content. Again, do not promote other people here. This is where you create, where you add your own content. So articles, interviews, whatever it is, what is relevant and interesting, add those in your featured section. It can even be a link to a LinkedIn post or LinkedIn article that you did. So it's an easy tool to use. And then the last thing about the LinkedIn is your about. Your LinkedIn about is not a summary of your resume. It's your story. This is the reason, this is the opportunity to write your story, to create a narrative that talks about your future. What is it that you're passionate about? What do you believe in? What value do you add? How do you see your industry evolve? Use the about to talk about where you want to go. People go to your LinkedIn, they see your about, they see your profile, and say, hey, wait a minute, she's looking for this and this, or she's really interested into this. That's interesting. I want to ask her to come and speak. I want to maybe ask her if she wants to join my project, whatever it is. So make sure that your about is about you and it's about the future. Kristy, anything you want to add on your LinkedIn efforts?
The only thing I'll add, you did a great job covering it, was the use of featured is so easy and so important, because in a snapshot, you can see if you're included in a podcast, an interview, things that you think are interesting that you want others to know that you're connected to, as far as say HBR articles that you have commented on or shared. It's a real easy snapshot for someone to understand the breadth and depth of who you are relative to your personal brand and what you bring from a professional standpoint as well. In my case, I mean, that's what I'm looking to do, but it's very adaptable based on what your priorities are.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so of course, overall, looking at your LinkedIn profile with these tips or these tactics, look at it if LinkedIn is actually supporting your next goal. That's an important one. So how else can we activate, let's say, our personal brand? Here we go. Content creation, a big one, a big hurdle. A lot of people say, well, I'm not gonna do it, or I don't want to, whatever the reasons. I think I have 5 reasons why we do not create content. But content creation is essential, because again, we can say that we're a brand anthropologist or an agent for positive change, but if we just say that and we don't back it up with content, it's nothing. So we need to make sure that we create content. So here's one example, Alexandra Morehouse, she's the CMO of Banner Health at the moment. We work with her and she's an ESG influencer. So we interviewed her and we wrote a story about the ABCs of ESG. We published it for her on one of our Medium platforms and it's out there when you Google her. So this is one way of creating content. You can be interviewed or you can interview each other if you like. Another way of creating content is using, and that's what Kristy briefly touched upon, is using existing content. We call that third-party content. So in the case of Troy, we talk about how tech transform business. We interviewed him at the start, we wrote the stories, etc. And at some point we said, let's see if we can use existing content. So instead of creating new content all the time, if we find interesting content on a Harvard Business Review or a Forbes or a Fortune that talks about understanding tech to transform business, we can use that. We write what we call a lead-in, short vision piece for Troy on that article, and we can use that, and that will be published. So it's still his vision, his vision supporting his brand, but we're just using a third-party source to reinforce him or to endorse him. So that works as well. It's less time consuming, but it really is a very effective way. So never say great article. No, you really have to put in the time to talk about why this article is relevant, why it resonates with you, and why you think your audience should be reading it or should be interested in it. So in this way, you kind of become a curator for your audience. So I don't have the time to read the whole Harvard Business Review, but if Troy gives me a short recap with his vision, I'm perfectly fine. I know the topic and that's all I need to read. And at the same time, he's building his personal brand in my perception. And then we go to the third way of creating content, which is what we're doing with Kristy. Kristy?
We're doing a couple of things. Thank you. We've been working a lot on where I have been interviewed or been on a panel or been on a podcast, and we take that video and we create articles that I can publish. We also, and it falls into the areas that are important to me as far as what differentiates me. So creator of sustainable growth. As Anouk said, I could say that I'm a creator of sustainable growth, but I have to back that up. So we're working on content that backs that up. An empowering leader. It's really important to me that I demonstrate leadership through inclusivity and authenticity. And one of the best things Anouk ever said to me was, you can say you're authentic, just like people can say they're funny, but you actually have to demonstrate that you're funny. You have to demonstrate you're authentic. So working on being an empowering leader through the conversations that I've had, the things I write about, or the articles that I comment about. I think what's really interesting too, and you mentioned this on Troy, is if I see what Troy posts and I think it's interesting, and Troy actually makes my life a little bit easier because he's summarizing what I think are important points, I'm going to follow Troy. And I'm going to look at what Troy posts, and he's going to help me get smarter and help me increase my depth in content by following him. And that's been a priority of mine too, is how can I be someone that people can learn from and follow and increase my sphere of influence. So there's a few different strategies and a few different layers to this, but at the minimum, it is ensuring that I'm honoring the two areas of differentiation around sustainable growth and empowering leadership.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, and the whole concept of creating that followership and increasing that sphere of influence, again, even if you're not looking for a new job, but if you're looking to, as in Kristy's case, to really build a stronger foundation, it's so much easier to follow someone who stands for something than following someone who is undefined, let's say. So being a leader in your organization for internal purposes only, it's super important to build that brand and to get that brand out there so people know, oh, Kristy, yeah, of course, we know she's all about positive change. So am I. So I'm going to follow her lead. And that's really important when you start thinking about building your personal brand. So there are many reasons why you should have a personal brand, but this is one of them. It's going to make your leadership easier. And of course, it has to be authentic, but I mean, that's...
Can I add one other thing, Anouk? You just made me think of something. And this is probably a lot for the people on the phone. So when we get to questions, happy to go deeper into these areas. But one of the things I haven't done yet that you probably will touch on is I haven't taken this content to proactively find leaders, organizations, or people that I may want to follow or I may want to introduce myself to, and use the content as a way to make that connection. That was something that you have described to me. And I will just be honest, I haven't done that yet, but I think that's a real opportunity for me to sort of grow my influence and meet other people who may not have crossed my path.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a really good point. And it is exactly there is a passive and an active point part to this. And the active point is like, okay, I can go on, for example, on LinkedIn and find leaders or influencers that I'm following, but hey, I really would like to be connected with Kristy. How can I do that? Can I just ask her to connect? Or can I ask her to connect, or can I share one piece of my content saying, hey, I just wrote this article, or this article was published about me. What is your take on the topic? So we start having that conversation instead of me just asking to connect with you. So connecting based on content is a very easy way of getting your message out there and connect with, let's say, like-minded people or people who are in the same area as you are. Great point. So how do you define your communication topics? How do you figure out what should I be communicating about? Because, well, for Kristy, yeah, it's easy, she knows, but it's not that easy for everybody. So think about this Venn diagram and think about finding the overlap between your expertise, what you're really, really good at, your passion. What is it that you stand for? What do you really care about? And then think about what your target audience is looking for. And maybe a quick, because it's already 12:43, maybe a quick example. A wealth management banker. She's very, very good at managing wealth of her clients. Because we talked to her, she's very passionate about the environment. Her target audience, her clients, are looking for making more money. So if we combine those three, we came up with the idea that she should be focusing on ESG investing, which she started doing. She started creating content, talking to people, etc. So in her network, she became known as the expert in ESG investing, which helped her get new clients. Just an example, but really think about these three areas, find the overlap, and that might help you find your communication topics. Now I have 5 obstacles for not creating content, but I'm going to go through them real quickly because I think we should maybe go to Q&A. I prefer not to talk about myself, which is very true mostly for women and diverse leaders. The way to get over this, a way to get over this hurdle is to think it's not about my ego. It's about helping people on the other side of the room or the screen to understand who I am and what I bring to the table. So if we add in the word helping, that usually helps us get over that hurdle. I don't know my communication topics. That's why I said, think about the three circles, your passion, your expertise, and what your target audience is interested in. Find the overlap, and that might help you find your communication topics. I'm not comfortable in front of a camera. A lot of people have that. Luckily, today, we all have our iPhones that are much less intrusive than the big cameras that we used to have. Just start trying, just start creating some selfie videos, come up with a 45-second statement on a certain topic, get used to it, get more comfortable. 80%, I think, of all the content that will be consumed in 2025 is going to be video content. So you need to be out there with your face. I'm not a good writer. I don't know if that applies to the audience today, but that's what we very often see. Usually marketeers are good writers, but even if you don't have the time, use ChatGPT, use people around you. There's a lot of people who can help you write. ChatGPT can really help you get started. If you don't like a white page that has nothing on it, ask Chat to get you started. So there's ways to get over this. And of course, the most important one, I have no time, which is very true, I'm guessing, for all of us. However, again, you can work with people, you can get support from people who can help you. But even if you don't, it's so important to make time to invest in you, to invest in your next steps in your career, to invest time in developing who you are and what you stand for and where you want to go next. If you're doing your job and you're working really hard, that's one thing. But take a step back, look where you want to go, and just allocate some time to work on your own, let's say, personal development in the personal branding sphere. It's super important. We need to position ourselves as an expert. That's what we do with content. Kristy, I think we talked about this already. I mean, so I think we can skip it because this is about your topics, what you're talking about. all to reinforce your personal brand. Then the last part is about publishing. So the moment that you have your content, make sure that you use the platforms that are available to publish your content on. Of course, you have LinkedIn, very important, but the thing is, everything that happens within LinkedIn stays within LinkedIn. Sometimes it's a good thing, but not always. So see if you can use other networks as well, or other platforms as well. We have, of course, YouTube, we have Medium, Script, Issue, WordPress. These are all open source platforms that you can use to publish your content. That's what we do for our clients as well. So we help them build their Signitt personal branding page, of which you've seen some examples come by. Your Signitt personal branding page includes all the elements of your personal brand, your positioning statement, your key differentiators, a short bio focused on the future. And then all those different pieces of content are the proof points that we create. And they are published on platforms like Medium, WordPress, YouTube, etc. And what happens is that because we publish on all these different platforms, we start to control more and more of your online narrative. So by publishing on a Medium, it can show up as a link on your Google search, etc. So the more you publish on different platforms, the more you can control, let's say, your online narrative, which again will help you when all of us, 85% of us, will actually Google you. Last one, how do you stay current and relevant? We could spend a whole other hour talking about this, but this is really, as we said, you need to be active on your LinkedIn. You need to make sure that you connect with people, that you, when people respond or comment on one of your posts or your articles, make sure you start the conversation, engage with people, see if you can create a LinkedIn bot, which is something that we have as well for our clients, which is, okay, whenever Kristy publishes something, a whole group of other executive leaders or senior executives agree to like and comment on her. So we push ourselves up in those LinkedIn search engines. So it's really about staying active and staying relevant and current so that people know that you're active, you're out there, and you're becoming that expert, or you're finding that new job, or again, whatever your next goal is. Kristy, any last thoughts to add before we go into Q&A?
I think we should go to Q&A. We covered a lot of ground, and I see the chat has a lot of really good questions in there.
Okay. Okay, well,
Do you want to just take them, Anouk? Might be easier if you just walk through them in the interest of time.
yeah. Let's see if we can find some questions for Kristy, because I've been talking a lot. Kristy, did you see some for you?
Rasika did, she's put one through asking when I think I saw it come up, Rasika. So if you want to, it was, what made me decide where there's a moment of realization? Yes, there was a kind of a three-part moment of realization. One, I became the interim CMO at Kaiser Permanente on the second day of shelter in place. And so I realized a couple things. I was in a very large role. We were not going back in person. We were not networking in person. And I was pretty active outside. So it really, I felt like I needed to pay attention to my LinkedIn profile and sort of get my my act together in that space. My executive coach introduced me to Anouk, and my executive coach and I were talking about, okay, what's your next thing? How are you? So you got the role. I've been working really hard for it. 5 years, what do you want to be? And it literally was, I'm like in the same week saying, I just got here. And she's like, no, you got to think about the next thing. And she introduced me to Anouk, and we worked through the process. So I think it was a job change, and then just sort of the environment in which our context was sort of a little bit of a kick in the pants.
Oh. Okay, there's another question here from Ali. Do you have a recommendation for frequency of publishing to stay relevant? It feels like some people post on LinkedIn too much and it's counterproductive. I'm curious of your take on the balance. I mean, I have an idea and I can discuss, because what Kristy and I are working on momentarily is we publish once a month. Once a month, and even for most of our clients, we publish once every 2 months because they don't have their own content. Kristy has quite a lot of content. She's speaking on panels, so we kind of like steady on a monthly basis. That's good. I don't believe you need to do more. I believe much more in quality of content instead of quantity of content. And it's having that kind of a consistency. It's better to have something every month or even every 2 months instead of having 5 things this week and then nothing for 6 months. So make sure that when you start thinking about publishing content, you make a plan. Say, okay, I'm going to publish something every month. I'm going to make sure that I do something, I think about my topics, I make a publication plan, a content plan, so that it's really thought through. So don't just do anything without having a plan, because it's not really going to work. And you spend time and then it's like, oh, I did this, but it doesn't work. So I think frequency of publishing once a month, once every 2 months. And it has to be realistic.
If I can just add too, I think that's exactly right. It is quality over quantity. And with that month, it gives you a chance in between that if you come upon something that's really interesting, you can either decide, do I would do it now or do I hold on to it later? Because we get tired of like seeing ourselves or think that we're not doing enough, but there's really a pattern to it that makes you relevant, that you have to be really intentional about. Just as marketers, we know this. But I think the other part is it also gives flexibility to your ability to put things out there in order for people who are following you to know that you're still out there and have something to say.
Yeah, exactly. There's another comment or question from Candace. She said, Kristy's headline has her title included and you mentioned that ours should not. Do you suggest that we start with the other descriptors, keywords before our title, if it is included, or is it based on a career level? It depends a little bit. I think having a CMO title is not bad at all. But I would not want her to say CMO at Kaiser Permanente. So it was mainly, let's say, the company that you need to get rid of, let's say, in your headline. But let's say you're a project manager, but you don't want to do that anymore. You want to move to the next level. Then don't put project manager in your headline. If you're a CMO and let's say you're happy with the title, you can use it. So think, your headline is all about thinking how you want people, search firms or hiring managers or people who are looking to hire you, how they want to see you or how they want to find you. Start your first descriptor should be what you want to be known for first. So in our work with board directors, we always say, okay, start with non-executive director or board director, or even if it's board level candidate or board ready, board ready. So make sure that you start with the most important one, and then you can add the other ones. Your positioning statement, your key differentiators, that differentiates you, let's say, from the other CMOs. So in Kristy's case, yes, CMO, not Kaiser Permanente, but add, let's say, the descriptors that make you stand out.
I think it's a great question though, because as you were going through it and I saw mine up there and I saw this question come through, I built that a while ago. I actually think it's a good time to revisit it and wonder if I should change the order of things and maybe take some of the pieces out to freshen it up.
For sure. And that shows that you have your LinkedIn, it's a living document, let's say. It's not set in stone, it's not forever. So every now and then, maybe at the same time that you do your every 3 months online assessment, you also really look at your LinkedIn. Okay, is it still up to speed, up to date? Am I still saying what I want to say? Or is it still saying what I want people to see, to find about me? See if I find something else.
There was a question, Anouk, what if you Google yourself and don't find anything? I know I personally have my LinkedIn profile hidden from search engines and my personal social accounts are private.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's a good thing, but I mean, everything at the end of the day is a personal choice. So if you say, I don't want to be found online because of whatever reason you have, I think that's a good decision. I think you just need to be aware of what you look like online, or if it's there. And if you say, hey, I'm not showing up at all, but I would like to, well, then you can start making some changes. Maybe open up your LinkedIn profile, publish some things on other platforms. So again, it's a personal choice. And we sometimes work with people and say, I really want to work on my personal brand, but I don't want to have an online presence, which is fine, because not everybody wants that or needs that. There's also a thing that people say, hey, I Google myself and I don't find anything because there is like a zillion people with my name. There are several things you can do about that. We have a great example. One of our clients, and Kristy knows him, his name is Kevin Hart. And it's not the Kevin Hart. So he said, I don't know if you can do anything for me. So let's just build my brand and we'll see. And he has a middle initial, the letter L. So we started using Kevin L. Hart. So now when you Google Kevin L. Hart, our Kevin shows up. And he was like, oh, wow, I never thought this was possible, etc. So using a middle name or a middle initial, or even if you have a very strong positioning statement that you like, you can add that to your name in all the communication that you have. So communicate Anouk Pappers, brand anthropologist, everywhere. So people, if they just Google your name, they don't find anything, they will come up with the idea, hey, let me add the positioning statement, and then, oh, there she is. But again, if you don't show up at all, it's either you have work to do, or if it's a conscious choice, then that's fine too.
Great. I also saw a question in here which was talking about companies. So in many headlines, people mention previous companies like ex-Google, ex-Microsoft. What are your thoughts on that?
Kristy, do you have an idea on that or an opinion?
I do have an opinion. My opinion is when I am hiring individuals and I look for their online presence and I see that they are X something or other, there are times when I actually, it makes me pay more attention because I understand that they've worked in large complex organizations, or if I'm looking for someone who's very technical, that they have technical experience. So I think there are times when it is appropriate. And as Anouk says, kind of it depends. It depends on what you're looking to do and how you use your headline to achieve those goals.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's it. If you want to be known for these things, and if you think, like you say, okay, having worked at Microsoft or Google might help me find my next job, then why not use it?
These are all sort of tools in our toolbox, right? These are assets of all the things we bring to the conversation, and how do we leverage them and amplify them to meet the goals that we have for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And the answer is, and it's kind of like annoying, but it's very often, it depends. And it depends, and it depends on your goal. So if you think about it, all the things, let's say all the questions that you have around your brand or your online presence, the answer is very often, it depends on your goal. So your next goal is really the starting point that you need to figure out, what do I want to achieve? And then you can think about, okay, so who do I need to be connected with on LinkedIn? Who's my target audience? How do I communicate? What do I communicate about, etc.? So it all depends on that first question, on that next goal.
And I know we're out of time, but I just want to sort of underscore that last point, because what I found the hardest about getting started was to find that level of specificity. What is it you're trying to achieve? What is your and then work on the brand, and then who needs to hear from you? And that's the hardest part, is to really winnow it down to the critical thing that you're trying to do, and then shape everything around it. And then over time you can build upon it. But that was one of the more challenging parts. And then from there, it's easier.
Yeah.
Kristy, it's almost like a branding exercise, right? What's the vision for the future of the brand?
Exactly.
Today, what's your best self, and like the marriage of the two, really sort of, which is a hard thing to crack, but especially when it's for yourself.
Yes, exactly. Especially when you're talking about yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a funny thing, of course, because we're talking to marketeers. I mean, we're working with Kristy. I mean, she knows how to build a brand. But it's a different story if it's your own personal brand. Yeah,
that's right.
So thank you, everybody. I know it seems like this is a interesting topic and we have lots of questions. We might have run out of time. Anouk's email is in the chat. Please get in touch with her for your consultation. And thank you to Kristy and Anouk. This was really, really helpful and extremely enlightening, even for myself, having done marketing forever. So thank you. Really appreciate your insights and your knowledge and your expertise. I hope our audience found this helpful. And look out for our other AMA sessions. We are very active in the New York area now. So come to our networking events, join our webinars. We're also doing in-person events now just to build more of a community. Become a member, and we look forward to seeing you around soon. Thank you, Kristy and Anouk.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for having
much.
us. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.